Hello and welcome to OWASP Switzerland. I'm very pleased to welcome you once again to our chapter meeting. My name is Robert and I'm here together with my colleague Patrick Steger and Sven Fetch. We're very pleased to welcome you once again. First of all, if you're thinking about what is OWASP in general, this is not the talk for you today, but you'll find plenty of information if you go to owasp.org. You want to give something back? Add a /membership and you will find what you're looking for. Please go to owasp-switzerland.ch. You have a field where you can, but you don't have to enter your name, and you have a possibility to write your questions or also just messages down. Questions will come up in the end. We will try to cluster them a little for you to make it more interactive. Paddy, my colleague, will do the presentation together with Mili at this point. Let's go into it. Mili, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you. Hello together. Today's session is all about why threat modeling is much more than just threat hunting. I will try to give a little bit an other view about threat modeling and which kind of benefit you can have as well with this topic about threat modeling. First of all, a short disclaimer. Everything shared here during this session or during this presentation, it's my own opinion and does not necessarily reflect the opinion of Swisscom as company. So, about today's agenda, it's a short intro about what is threat modeling and why we should do a threat model. I will give some everyday examples, some generic examples, and then I will as well, or at least I will try to explain why I am using this approach, or these generic examples in the beginning of the session. Then a little chapter about SAFe. SAFe is an agile framework about the working structure and threat modeling. Also, what is the relation between SAFe and threat modeling? Then another chapter is about creating business value through threat modeling. Also, how it's business value and threat modeling related, as well my point of view. And then at the end, I'll show you some experience which I have in a typical workshop, or how I set the workshop up, and how the workshop is moderated during the days which we are doing the workshop. So before I do a deep dive in the first generic example, a proverb which I really like is this one from George Bernard Shaw. The meaning is, people would rather let themselves be ruined by praise than improved by criticism. That's something which I see if you do a threat modeling session. It's usually the goal is not to finger point somewhere, to blame someone about some things. It's more to improve together the current situation and to going together on a better improvement of the product, shortly said. So what is threat modeling and why? Also in general, really short said, threat modeling is a structured approach that allows to find security risks, also to find security risks, to identify security risk, and as well to address it based on the priority of your backlog. Sure, based as well on the risks, because if the risk is high, you will fix it earlier. If the risk is low, then you will take usually a little bit more time to fix this kind of risk. Then why threat modeling? That's a why threat model. It's always the question why we are doing some things. And for me myself, threat modeling, the methodology itself, it's really something it helps to ensure a business continuity, that the business, that you don't have business risk, or better said, you have less business risk, you can better manage them, and you are aware of business risks and you can mitigate them. And what is really great about threat modeling methodology, if you have this open mind to not only focus on threat model findings and then it's closed. If you look as well on the different benefits in the same time, it's increased the cooperation, also the collaboration between the employees and the different departments as well. And as well, it helps for the knowledge transfer. what exactly about knowledge transfer and so on. I will explain you a little bit later in some other slides what I mean about this knowledge transfer and collaboration. Now let's go in a generic view about threat modeling and a fortress. So what we should not forget is threat modeling is not something new. We are doing it. We have done it in the past. And we are thinking usually that today the threat modeling is something new. It comes with the IT field. It comes with the information, with the cybersecurity and some things. But the threat modeling, it always exists. It's always about finding a threat, also finding some things which threats your environment, and then what is maybe the vulnerability in your environment which can be exploited, and then find as well the mitigation to mitigate this kind, or to reduce as well the impact, at least the impact on your side. If you see this example here about this fortress in the past, some couple hundreds of years in the past. So as well, in the past, I was thinking, okay, where I should put my fortress, what is the best location? And before someone is building, usually before you're building something, you will think, okay, what is the possible threats in this kind? What should I be protected against? Which kind of attacks and so on? And then if you see the threats in the past, for example, tunneling under, that was one attack vector in the past. I'm doing a tunnel under the ground, and then I'm inside the wall. So the idea in this past was, okay, how I can protect myself uh, for this given threat you're tunneling, for example. Then you need to think before you are building the fortress, where I need to put this fortress or to build that fortress. If you are thinking about lately, then then it will be really costly to do some mitigation measures in place. For example, if you are building a fortress somewhere where the ground is not hard, you can easily tunnel under, then the mitigation will cost a lot to be mitigated against this kind of attacks. But if you think about this kind of attack or threat in advance, then you will build your fortress somewhere else, which the underground, as the ground is harder, so you don't have to think about mitigation afterwards the building, because you have already think during the architecture phase and during the building phase about this threat. You have already built it like this, and so if an attacker is coming to try to use this threat vector, it's it's still possible, but the likelihood to succeed, it's not given. You need to put a lot of effort, and usually if you put a lot of effort, then you will choose another attack vector than this one. And this as well, monitoring, it's a nice case. I was surprised myself where I have watched one times a documentation, so in the Middle Age, how they protect against, for example, these tunneling under techniques. And I was really surprised there was some rudimentarily or some basic monitoring capabilities in place, where there was the possibility to find out under which wall the enemy, also the threat actor, is coming. So they have put in mitigation measures, also mitigation measures in place to attack, also to mitigate this attack, for example. It's really it's interesting. So if you think about this monitoring, in the past already we have put some monitoring in place, so it should make sense as well as today we should have a security monitoring in place, not a health monitoring, a security monitoring in place to protect our assets against security risks. Battering ram, so battering is nothing else as today in today's world brute force. You try to brute force some things, and if you have a good password, then the battering ram or the brute force attack, it will not be successful. But if you have a bad password, for example, you have a bad gate, then the battering ram brute forcing will be successful. CH is a DDoS attack, a DOS attack. And then other attack vectors like in the past and today are insider attack, corruptions, and so on. So if you take another example, we have here a mountain road. You see a lot of snow on the road. We can assume as well maybe there are as well ice on the road. So you will have the issue if you try to brake. Maybe it will you can't stop with the car. So let's think about this threat model. Let's think about it. We are now in the operational phase. So we have a product which in the operational phase. So we have already built it and so on, and now we are doing a threat model during the status of it's in operational. And what we are doing then, we are assessing the current situation of the threat model, of the system, and try to understand, okay, what are the threats based on the current knowledge, on the current current knowledge, and then what are threats, what are the possible vulnerabilities, and what can we do about it to mitigate it, and ensure risks. But this is the risk process later on. Usually, which kind of question we will ask ourselves is, for example, we are with the car on the road, so we are in the operational phase, we are driving the car ready, the product is already built, and now we think about, okay, maybe is our speed adapted to the environment? Maybe we need to slow down a little bit because our car is not really built for this kind of environment. Have we maybe the necessary equipment with us? Maybe snow chains and so on. As well, like we are in the operational phase, and now the environment have changed. Maybe we have never think about in the past. Should maybe improve some things on the structure, improve some mitigations, improve some security measures. And now we are in this phase and think, okay, have we still the necessary mitigation measures in place, or should we maybe reduce some speed? Should we maybe add some additional equipment, so mitigation measures on the place? Maybe another example, threat modeling car. I choose this nice car here. So let's talk about the design phase. So before we are going on the road, we'll think about it. Okay, what is the road? Also, what is the direction we are going, and what we need to think about it. So we know we will going on the road during the mountains, and there are snow. So first of all, before we are taking the car, we are going on the road, also on the design phase. We are thinking about possible threats, possible environmental threats. Then, okay, we need maybe snow chains. So check, we have the snow chains. Maybe snow tire. Have we the right tire there? Or maybe a totally other question is maybe a different car. Is really our car the appropriate one for this given environment? Where should we go to drive about? And why I'm using these generic examples is because usually what you are doing is you need to show the PMs, PO, the management level as well, why it's important to do a threat model in your environment. It's not only in your environment, but in general, why threat model is important. And if you can show that it's not something, it comes only for the security field, it's something general with everybody does usually, consciously or unconsciously, then it makes more sense, and the likelihood that the resources will be spoken, that it will give you the time necessary to put the threat model in place, to think about possible threats and vulnerabilities which you have in your environment, and then to think about mitigation measures. It's all about you need to give him this awareness why it's important to do a threat model. Another example which I like very much, because usually everybody of us, it really does is unconsciously, it's the weather. Before we are going outside our office, or outside, not outside office, outside our apartment, usually what we are doing, we check the app, the weather app, or we are checking outside the window what is the current weather, and then we will clothe us accordingly. And what does mean is the threat is the weather, the vulnerability is the clothes, and the risk is getting wet. And it's all about this. It's really every one of us does it consciously or unconsciously. And if we are doing it in a private life, then it can't be wrong if we are doing it in the business as well. So that is the try to give this on the road, the different participants, that's really something valuable. It's not something a waste of resource, a waste of time. It creates some value. After later on, I will give you some examples about creating values and so on. Let's take a little intro in SAFe and threat modeling. So SAFe is this scaled agile framework, one framework which I use for agile working, also collaboration together. And what does threat modeling what is the relation between the SAFe and threat modeling? There are two pipelines, at least two, which I'm aware of it. One is one of this continuous delivery pipeline is this continuous exploration. And there, threat modeling is explicitly mentioned in the list of architecture solution. Also, threat modeling is there as well listed that you should do a threat model during the architecture. And in the continuous integration as well. So we have two different processes on the continuous delivery pipeline, which 2 times threat modeling is mentioned. Also they require 2 times to do a threat model. Yep. And in the continuous integration, the threat model is listed under develop the solution. So creating business value through threat modeling. Usually, if you're doing a threat model in the early phase of the building of your product, it will reduce some unnecessary cost because you have identified some possible threats earlier, so you can planify it and fix them during your regular implementation, also development phase, and it will be less costly than fixing some architecture issues later on. Security, it reduced the risk of possible, I will go later on deeply. Knowledge, my experience has shown that during a threat modeling session, if you put some different members on it, maybe as well new employees which are joining new the team, there's a lot of knowledge in a threat modeling session, and to onboard a new employee during a threat model is great opportunity for him as well. It can as well bring some possible knowledge, but based on different attack vectors, knowledge on different coding products which he brings from other company. But what this helps really is that he will understand how the product it works. He understand how it works, what is the meaning behind different entry points, what is the meaning behind the business purpose of different processes, and then he will understand in a short session his new environment. Awareness as well. This is as well great in a threat modeling workshop. You are creating this awareness about the current situation or current threats and so on. You are receiving as well commitments because if you explain it well to the participants, there's a value there. Collaboration improves teamwork and beyond. And transparency. Transparency is important. It's important topic, not only in threat modeling, but is one of this topic as well in threat modeling, because if you try to find threats and vulnerability, then you will have risks, and then you need as well to raise your concerns on the right level. But I have a dedicated slide for this, so I will go then a little deeper on this topic. So reduce unnecessary costs. Like mentioned before, risk identified in the early phase. At earlier possible, at least cost it will be to fix some things, because you can planify it, you can think about it. It will not be a showstopper. If, for example, you're finding a critical vulnerability based on a threat, later on it will be maybe a showstopper. Countermeasures can be planned more efficiently and delayed due to critical findings in the audit. Based on the product which you are building, sometimes it's not really internet exposed, it may be some small product, not really a big exposure, then sometimes an audit is not done, as an external security audit with external security experts or pen testers. But if you are building a product which is internet facing, on where you have a lot of customers, then usually you will. It's a requirement that you will do an external audit to verify if what you have built have really the necessary quality for your customers. And if then you have findings, critical findings, then it will be a showstopper and you will have a delay to provide the new product to your customers. So what you will do usually is, if you do a threat model in advanced, in the beginning of your building phase, your architecture phase, then you will think what are the threats, what you are building, also what are the mitigation measures in place, and then the likelihood that during an audit there will be some critical finding is less. Also it's really less compared if you are not doing a threat model in advanced. Yeah, another point to reduce unnecessary cost is reduce potential compensation payments. It was as well in the past, but in today's world, it changed a little bit. Then, if today you have an service interruption based on a cybersecurity incident, and then comes out like we have seen in the United States, all these different Colonia pipeline and so on incidents from last year, if I'm not wrong. They are big impact on the different customers of Colonia pipeline, suppliers and so on. And some of them are currently are asking over their lawyers, are asking some compensation payments. So security vulnerabilities, impacts and so on, they have direct impact as well on the business side as direct. Security field itself, it reduces the risk of possible service disruptions. It's a classic one. Sure, if you have built a good product, because security is always a qualitative aspect of a product, how secure it is, then you will have as well less service interruptions based on some DOS, DDoS, or other possible attack vectors. In today's world, the data breach damage has a big impact on the reputation of the company, and as well, it's really a big input on the reputation. So if you have a data breach based on negligence on the security measures in place and monitoring and so on, then there's a big impact. And the data breaches as well can have legal consequences. Then it's always depending which kind of data you have on your site. Then you have different legal which can apply. And if you are working in the international field, then you have local data protection acts. You have the international data, also international based on the country, GDPR, and so on. Knowledge, like mentioned before, knowledge as integration of new employees. This one point which I personally think it's really a great opportunity if you have new members in your team that you can participate and see and understand what is the purpose of your product, as well as knowledge transfer, because usually there is really technical discussion. It's not a high level discussion about possible threat and possible vulnerability. It's really a hands-on. It's like that is a threat. Have your vulnerability in your place. It's like, okay, explain me please how it's built on your site, also how it's built, how you mitigate against this threat, which kind of frameworks you're using, and so on. It's not a high level theoretical threat model. It's a technical threat model, and then it's a lot of knowledge which we'll be sharing during the session. Improve skills. Sure, if you have this knowledge transfer between the members, then you have as well improvement of the skills of the participants. About awareness. Awareness is an important point, because usually if someone thinks something is not critical, or we don't need to do a threat model, how it's something new, or maybe it's something has security wanted again, it's something from security, it's not really necessary. It's usually it's missing the awareness about the current threat situation, also in which field we are currently, what are the currently threats, because we should not forget that the technique, the engineers, the developers, they have the knowledge usually about possible threats in which field we are. But the manager, the level above, they have other concerns. They need to run the business. They need to find the business value, to create value, to create all this business management aspects. So what we need to ensure is that there is a connection between the developers, the engineers, and the management. Because if you can show them why it's important, this, also for example, threat modeling, why it's important to fix this kind of risk, then the likelihood that he will give you the right resources, that they give you the right tools, and so on, it's more given them, because he understands now the business value. Because if you can as well in the business value explain, okay, we have this and this and this business value because we have this and this risks, or potential risk not, then the business value is there. And we should as well not forget is if you are building some things, we are building is for a purpose, for a customer experience or for something else. So there's always a purpose for it, and then we need to connect together. And the commitment, sure, like mentioned before, if you put the time and you explain it, not on technical level. For that reason, I mentioned before, I using some generic examples in the beginning before I going deep dive, because if you're going directly deep dive on technical term frameworks and so on and so on, usually you lost a lot of people. So what you need to do it on the first level, you need to begin with step by step general approach, so we are all on the same level, and then we are going further and further and further. And it's clear that the PM, PO, and so on doesn't need to participate since the beginning in this session. But later on, I will explain how I do in the workshop internally. I give a little bit deep dive how I'm handling this inside the company, but the commitment will be then there. Collaboration, it's a really important step. So if you're working together, you are collaborating together and as well behind, because usually you can't explain or give an answer on all technical implementation on your side. Then you will work together. You will ask the other one, hey, explain me how it works. You will ask maybe another teammate or another department, this is a new responsibility. Can you explain, please, how you mitigate against these attacks? And so you have this interconnection, not interconnection behind, for example, it's more closer. You have really this communication, and there's no an exchange between direct communication if you can speak with another, because then you will learn a lot, and then you can interact with another and connect as well. Safe-based leadership is something I came around about safe-based leadership and what the meaning. But the meaning about safe-based leadership is you need to provide team members a base where they have the feeling I'm safe. They have the feeling I can raise my concerns up. I can raise these risks. I can raise this, but sure, always on a with a respect manner, as always with some polite way. But I have this possibility to raise it without any issues or concerns that maybe if I raise this issue, then someone will come and finger point or something else. And safe-based leadership, it's really important, because if you build this environment where the members can speak up directly to you, to the peer, to the management, and raise some concerns and try to fix it, then it will work together. And that is something I try to establish during the workshop. Usually the workshop which I gives, it's between 2 days, always depending the size and the scope and so on. But what I try to build in this workshop, it's the safe haven, also the safe base, that they know they can talk with me, they can explain me, even if there are some findings. It doesn't matter. The goal is to find it, to define mitigation measures, and then to go further to the next one. What is great, if, for example, you are a big company and you have a central security organization, like a group security, or you have a central organization which overs which looks about the generic architecture aspect of some security measures we need to have on like a baseline, then it helps as well to connect together, to have a link there, to have the next change and so on. Transparency. It's a funny one. I will explain why it's a funny one about these fishes here, fish on the table. Usually, if you raise your concerns, if you raise risk and so on, so you make threats and vulnerability, you make them transparent. But what is really important is, you make them transparent, but always respect your need to know principle. So if you have found risks in your environment, the idea is not to inform everybody. The idea is more to inform your teammates, this one which is responsible about mitigating the risk, and as well your manager, direct manager, who this one which can give you the resources to fix about it. Also always respect the need to know principle, to not to widespread some risks or some vulnerabilities, and then the likelihood of that the risk, or the the likelihood that the vulnerability will be exploited, it's much higher than if you respect the need to know principle. It's common sense. Respect the need to know principle. Put the fish on the table. So put the fish on the table. I like this proverb. It comes from Sicilia, if I'm not wrong, from Sicilian fishers. But it was taken by George Colreiser, if I'm not wrong as well. He put some nice articles and presentation. You can Google George Colreiser. What the meaning about the put the fish on the table? It's like put the fish on the table. It's really don't put the fish under the table that it will begin to smell after some couple of days. Really put the fish on the table, look at him and think, okay, how I can mitigate now the risk. It's all about this. Raise the concerns up. Respect the need to know principle, very important. Respect the need to principle. Raise your concerns up. Try to find mitigation measures and then fix them, and then you go further to the next one if you have next ones. And about transparency, finger pointing. What is important on this kind of finger pointing is a wise man told me once, when you point your finger at other people, usually try 3 finger are pointing back. So don't finger point at anybody. Everybody can do a mistake. Maybe missing knowledge. Maybe it's about the best bad today. The issue, the best way is to communicate together, to find the solution, to fix it, and then we are going further. Because it's human, we can make mistakes, and the idea is not to finger point at someone. Always not forget, if you finger point at someone, 3 fingers are pointing back. A typical workshop. So that is the way I give this workshop usually. Based on this past year's Corona situation, there was switch more online session, because my own experience with online session is not the same experience like if you will do an on-site session. Also, if I'm talking about workshop, I'm talking about the workshop. If you are doing the intro, it's even if it's not only the workshop, but at least for the workshop, it's more valuable if you are in the meeting room, in an on-site meeting room, and you can interact with each other directly. The benefit, the output it's more likely there, and you can then see if someone has maybe some other question. You can ask him directly. You can better interact with him. The size usually, if it's on-site or online, it's maximum 10 participants. Why 10 participants? Is because if it's more, it's not possible to handle it. Also 10 participants, it's the maximum which you can take in a session. Then you can work together cooperatively, but you need a lot of effort about the moderation, to moderate the workshop itself. What I have switched on is if I'm doing the threat model after the intro, what is threat modeling as general awareness and so on. If I'm doing then applying the threat model based on a live system, I always using a live system, or the system where the participants, they know the system, they are in responsibility about the system. Why? Because the output is better, the interaction is better, and as well the acceptance of the participants afterwards is better, because now they understand how they can apply a threat model methodology on their system. What I try as well during this workshop, which I'm giving to establish, is this critical thinking. Never assume that something is like it should be because you are thinking you will build it like this. Always ask the question. Always try to understand how it's built, really how it works. Explain it, please. Never assume some things. Always verify that it's really like it should be. The question is always what should be. So it's always a question about the knowledge as well. So try always to understand how it works. Never assume some things. The last point, each trust boundary is managed by different participants. It's something I'm doing it myself. If I'm the moderator, I'm on the front. Moderation on my side means I will moderate the session. It means I will go through the different trust boundaries and then ask different participants how it works, explain me how it works on a technical level. Firstly, on a high level to understand the business value, what is possible for me to the environment. then technically how it works and so on. And then we're going more deeper to find possible threats and vulnerabilities. Yeah, like mentioned before, in the workshop I will do the into threat model, also more deeply than now in this session, also more deeply why we are doing it, based on the current situation, based on the owl days example, based on the newspaper example, what was the initial vector, how a company was compromised, how it affected a lot of different companies. I take a lot of time inside this awareness, because usually, like I mentioned before, in this intro session, I usually have different participants, as managers and so on, and they are not afterwards in this hands-on session. They are taking this couple 1-2 hours to look at it, to understand what are my engineers are doing, how they are putting their resources on place. And the feedback until now, which I received, it was more, okay, now I understand why security is important. Now I understand why we need to put more time on it. That are more the generic feedback. If you put the time and to explain them on a not a technical communication, more on a business value communication, then the commitment is there as well. Yeah, cargo culture. It's interesting. It's an interesting topic. I encourage everybody of you to Google it afterwards to understand what is cargo culture and so on. It was first, I think it was Richard Feynman, which raised this cargo culture topic. So in short, cargo culture means I'm now showing you threat modeling. Also not you now, but for example, we'll give in the workshop. I show this methodology, and then I assume they understand it now, and then they will do it like I mentioned, or like I showed them. They will apply it one-to-one in their environment. And mostly it doesn't work. So what you need first to establish is to why, also why we are doing it like this, and what is the idea behind it, what is the principle, why we are doing it really, why we are doing the threat model, and how they can adapt the threat model based on their system. If they try to copy the methodology one by one and doesn't adapt itself based on the environment, then there will be less value on it. And for that reason, I put some couple of minutes on the cargo culture. What is cargo culture and how it can affect everybody of us. Yeah, like mentioned before, what I try as well to establish during the threat modeling workshop is I try to reduce the hurdle. How to explain? I try to reduce the barrier to begin with the threat model. I try to reduce this, because if you put a high level of stones on the road, like you need this, then to be able to use this methodology, to be able to apply it on environment, it's more complicated. But if you reduce the different points, the different symbols, you keep it really simple, then the applicability, it's more possible. You're losing less time about applying threat model methodology. You're focused then on the output. And what I try always to give on the road is focusing on the output. Our goal is not to have a nice diagram or a nice picture. So our goal is to have a high level diagram, as a data flow diagram, and then focus on the trust boundaries, and then focus about the output. The general focus is not to put a lot of effort to drawing. The focus is to find vulnerability, also threats, vulnerability, and then to mitigate them. Moderation, task sharing, it's important one. So if you're moderating, you can't do writing and so on. You need to share your tasks. Understand why to write sorry on a whiteboard. So the best experience is if you are in an on-site meeting. So what I'm doing, also it's my way to do it. I'm writing somewhere on a whiteboard, sorry. And then I explain as well why. I write the sorry on the whiteboard to inform them, and then it's as well visual, so they see, okay, they're sorry, and now I understand why they sorry is written. It's about if I cut someone during a discussion, if I cut someone because he's explaining some technical measures during a couple of minutes, or maybe we are going in a direction which it's not the direction I want to go, then I have written sorry, and then I cut it. It's really important that the participants, they understand it's not something personally. It's something more moderation, time boxing that you need to focus on the output and to refocus again. And if you at the beginning you're transparent, you write a sorry and you explain why you write sorry. That's if you cut someone, it's not personal. Then the benefit and the output is better, and you can focus on finding threats and vulnerabilities. Yeah, we are ready at closing words. So, like Socrates said already, stagnation is the beginning of the end, and it means what we don't want is a ruin.
Thank you very much, Miljan, for your talk. It was interesting following you, and looks like you really did a good job in establishing this workshops and threat modeling in your organization also. And this directly brings me to the first question, actually. It's from someone who has no name, actually. And he asks, so how do you establish that you actually could perform this threat modeling workshop regularly in an organization, especially when a product is or software is already in production and running? So, I mean, how do you enforce that it actually happens?
Also, what is important is that you have your security policy in your company, and then you can put their threat model, you can put as one requirement in a security policy, like for secure development, one step is at least to do one threat model from your product during the development. If you have it written somewhere and it's approved by management, then you have already the reason there. And the other question is then about the workshop, because okay, you have the requirements, but you need as well the people which have this knowledge to give you this knowledge further, how to do a threat model. And so this is another question, and this is a little bit, yeah, it's not easy. What I can give you on the road, also on the ask, how to say it in English, it's find someone which is really interested about this topic, which loves to give knowledge to others, and then give him the task, do a deep dive about threat modeling, try and understand how it works, and then it can be like the person of contact which gives then afterwards the workshop. So you have then a continuity of quality, and then you can have this snowball principle. I forget to mention this, but that is something we push as well with this workshop in our company, is we are putting this 1.5, 2 days effort on it, because afterwards usually they are ready, they know what is the meaning about, and so it's more widespread the knowledge. Or you take some external experts from external companies which can help you. Merci, Paddy. I hope I answered your the question.
I guess so. Let me repeat maybe what I understood. So you basically say to make sure that it happens, you need to have some governance in place that actually says to you, to the whole company, you need to do that.
Exactly.
And then as a second step, you need to have staff that's able to actually perform this activity and loves to do this activity. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. Then let me directly jump to the next question from Amanda. You mentioned when you're doing the workshop, you kind of assign the participants to something you mentioned is a trust boundary. So they kind of are responsible for a trust boundary. Could you elaborate a bit on what you mean with trust boundary and how you identify such trust boundaries?
Thanks, Paddy. Thanks, Amanda, for your question. Yeah, Amanda, you're right. There's a slide missing. It will be better if I have put the slide before. The idea about trust boundary is also based on some threat modeling methodologies. You will draw a data flow diagram, and then usually you will put red dashed lines on entry points, like that is one trust boundary. Then you will name it trust boundary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then during the workshop, what I'm doing, and it always depends the size of the participants, is at least one of the participants will moderate one trust boundary on the methodology of Stride. You need to go through the Stride methodology through. Why I'm doing it like this? Then I ensure that at least one have done one trust boundary, and he know how it is to be in front of other participants. He know how the experience it is. He know how to ask the questions, and then I'm during this moderation. I'm then behind. I'm saying the stage is yours, participants XY. You have seen how I'm doing it in the first 2 or 3 trust boundaries. Now it's your way, and then I'm coaching him. I give him some inputs. What do you think? Have you really asked all questions? So what do you think? Maybe you should ask this question a little bit differently. It's more than the coaching part. But now about the trust boundary, what it is, if it's really new for you, I encourage you to Google, write there Stride trust boundary, and you will find a lot of good tutorials, a lot of good information. Microsoft as well has their own Microsoft Learning part about threat modeling, and there is as well mentioned about trust boundaries and so on.
Okay, thank you very much for explaining that. And well, we're nearly out of questions by now, but I of course have one on my own before I pass on to Rob, who has maybe also additional questions. I found an interesting thought that you mentioned. You're actually using threat modeling as a way also to introduce new employees. I think that's very ingenious, this idea. And how do you actually start with the threat modeling there? Do you start there with the existing threat model, or do you start with them from ground up, where you kind of explain first what the system does and then elaborate what they can imagine are the threats? Or how do you do that when you have new employees?
If I'm involved, then usually I start from the beginning, because usually I don't know what is really the idea behind if I'm involved or I'm requested to go somewhere. So I start really from the beginning. Maybe I'm asking some stupid questions, but first of all is to understand that we are all on the same level of understanding in the room, and then I go then deeper and deeper. And it's never requested as a new one will all understand, but at least it will take a lot of knowledge with him.
Okay, so this means you never have sessions where you just have newbies in, you always mix them. You have newbies and experienced people with the system.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
Okay, understood. Thanks a lot for explaining that. And Rob, would you like to add a question on your
Yes,
own?
please. Yes, please. Thank you very much first. You already put a little thoughts into that. My general thought was like, how long does it usually take you to bring a team up to speed so they can be on their own? What effort needs to be put into that? So you think it brings the value that you really are looking for? Because some value, as far as I understood, and I would also totally agree, is already by just them talking to each other about their thing. But what are your recommendations, or what is your experience on that topic?
Also I tried, if I'm about enabling them to do on their own a threat model, also I tried half-day sessions. I tried generic examples. I tried one-day session, but mostly my preferred way, but it's always the question about participants. If you have 6 or 7 participants, at least 1.5 day. Why 1.5 day? Is you can take a half day in the morning for the great explanation, so what is the idea behind and so on, and then give a good theoretical deep dive. Then on the afternoon, you will apply it. Also you will apply the theoretical part with you, also with the moderator. And in this context, it's me. You will apply it on the system. You will understand how the system it works. You will do the context diagram, data flow diagram, trust boundary, and so on. The whole process. And if you are taking this at least 1.5 days, you will not be in a hurry, because if you know it's short, then you are in a hurry. Then you don't have time to answer all questions. The people will leave the session with a lot of questions because they don't have this assurance to ask maybe the question, because they are thinking it's maybe not a really good question. But if you have a 1.5 day, there's a trust which is built between the participants. They know, okay, with him I can talk openly, I can ask him question. And as I'm talking about generic now, I have seen, usually if I take this time, that most of them, they are doing it on their own afterwards. It's not that they can fix it in a short time because I'm someone that pushes through, but if they are on their own, they understand what is the meaning behind, they understand what we want to achieve with this, and they are working on their own, what I have seen until now. So it's, in the most case, it works. But the question is always not less than 1.5 days if you have six participants, because then you will be in a hurry. And what is not great if someone leaves the session and you can't answer all questions.
Yeah. Okay. I took out something because, well, multiple things, but one thing that showed up, raised the question. It is, how long does the awareness stay with, for example, a product owner?
It's hard to measure. It's hard to measure. But what I have heard, also now it's hearsay, what I have heard is that if there is not a change about the product owner and so on, usually they understand now why it's important. So they are not putting like on the backlog. It's more like, okay, now I understand why it's important. They are more aware of it, and the awareness it's more there. So if you have once the awareness, then it's really hard to lose this awareness. It's more a question than about prioritization. But the feedback, it surprised me because that was not the intentional way. It was an positive product by side, because we have some PMs in the session. And then there was, in the future, after this session, I was aware, okay, we can take it as well on another side. We can put as well PMs, another layer inside, like awareness session. Yeah. I can't give you a time frame. I can't give you a time. I don't know. I don't know. I really can't give you a time frame.
That was never expected. Buddy, you let me know if there are other questions, otherwise I just go on. Perfect. Do you recommend some starting questions, like having a set of questions that you kind of know they're gonna work, they will have findings on these topics, and usually that there are at companies just some topics you can bring up and you will have at least one finding. Do you recommend those to, especially if you are training guys, to get them started more easily, to basically build up their knowledge with just handing them over a few of them? Or do you rather not, because reasons?
So if I understand correct, the question is if I provide them like a cheat sheet.
Sort of, yeah, sort of.
I was thinking as well about the possible threats, possible vulnerabilities, but my concerns are if I give someone a list, and it will, okay, I have checked this, so there is nothing, and we can go on. So my focus is more based on Stride, to explain what is Stride and to enable this critical thinking, for example, about spoofing. We are on Stride as spoofing, and to enable more, okay, try now to find a threat and find a vulnerability. And what I try to give them on the road is okay, first of all, you need to understand how it works. Okay, you are on this trust boundary, as on this entry point, trust boundary. So explain me, XY engineer or the developer, how it works. what is the business process, how it works, and then it comes explaining, and then I going deeper and deeper. Okay, what protocols I used, who is the initialization, the connection, and then deeper and deeper and deeper, and usually you will reach a level where you find, okay, it's built in secure manner based on the current knowledge, current protocols, blah blah. Or you will come at a point which will like this. I never thought about about this, and yeah, I prefer this way about Stride. And enable asking, enable critical thinking, and if you go through Stride, you tried all of this, also ST, also tempering, repudiation, information disclosure, and so on. If you go through, then you have built your knowledge, you have built some understandings, and if there is something, you will find it. Also, it's sure you will find it. Also, if you ask the question, you try to understand how technically it works, and you know how technical some vulnerabilities can be there, then you will have findings.
All right. I'm trying to follow your advice and not assuming stuff, but I assume you have developers abroad or even overseas. What are your experiences with those guys? If you have online sessions, do you even have online sessions at all? Or
Also for threat modeling sessions?
Yes.
Yes, if it's an online threat modeling session, then yeah, then you need to do it online. The experience is depending. It's depending from the lead threat model, also this one which moderates the session, because then you need to take them inside. How I'm doing it usually, everybody within the session will participate, and I will ask them by name, like Paddy, say me your opinion. What do you think? Rob,
Go on,
say
Paddy.
me your opinion. It's really like this. I will ask them by name, and then they need to give me an answer. Then they need to interact. And what I prefer as well is the camera is on. I need to see them.
Yeah.
Because then the participants, yeah, I need this because then it's really hard to see. You need to see this mimic, Gestik, then only this one which I've done a lot of thread will understand about this mimic topic. So it's an important one.
Yeah, gotcha. Great. One more thing. I guess you're having beside a product owner also Scrum Masters. Do you somehow use them in your standard setups? Do they have a specific role?
No, not. I tried once, but it there was no benefit. Also based on my opinion, on my experience, because what you need is engineers, developers, and you need the PO which gives the resources, which prioritized the backlog. And the Scrum Master, I haven't seen until now a benefit in this treatment session. Maybe there will be one, but currently I'm not aware of it.
All right. So from my side, Paddy, I will come to the last question. Checking back with you.
I'm fine too here, so nothing new has arrived.
Perfect.
So shoot with your last question, and then.
All right. Well, it's rather an easy one, I guess, or just a I don't know question, or the standard consulting one. It depends. But here it is. Would you recommend companies something like if you do a threat modeling, you get guaranteed X days to fix the most important thing? Something along these lines. Have you experience with that? Do you see stuff that would be heavily against it? Depend on the company for sure.
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends. That one you can't. It's really complex question. It's always depending the environment, the criticality. Yeah. It's depending.
Would you, if you coach someone, let's make it easier maybe. If you coach someone and you're at their side, they're doing stuff, and you figure out while they're doing the threat modeling, holy cow, this thing is doomed. Would you step in and recommend actions, or do you really take yourself out then in your role, let them do their thing? and
The
pass
question,
that in.
the question is, it's a product which already exists, or it's something
It
which
would,
is
in this case, I assume it already exists.
okay. If it's already exists or the risk exists already since XY time frame, so you will, yeah, it's something you will mention during the thread out of strike. You will, it says it will be a finding, and then based on the criticality, after you have done your first trust bound, your first try, then you will rating the risks, and then you will put criticality there. And if it's something that's critical, it's critical, and based usually on the criticality is as soon as possible. You need to fix it. If it's internet exposed, you need to reduce the internet facing service. Also, if it's possible, you will cut the internet facing and so on. But all it's really, it's depending the environment. It's depending environment, data, criticality, dependencies inside the company as a the system which communicates with others. Really, it's depending the entire scope. But if it's in a, yeah, I will never cut the thing. It will only be raised high, need a follow up, be inform the PO or the PM if it's something's more higher.
Mhm.
If it's in the architecture phase, it will be as well raised critical high. Try, not try, fix it before you go into the implementation. I will come back. Something like this. I will verify if it will be fixed or not. But yeah.
Yes, that brings us already to an end. So I point my finger at you, Mili, because now I no longer have to assume. I think I start to understand. Thank you very much.
That's it. Thanks.